The children of Israel cried out to God. They were slaves in Egypt, forced to build cities and work the fields under a cruel Pharaoh. Pharaoh feared the Israelites' growing numbers. He ordered all their baby boys to be thrown into the Nile River. The Nile would be their grave. One Israelite woman, Jochebed, hid her newborn son for as long as she could. When she could hide him no longer, she made a plan. She wove a basket of reeds and waterproofed it with pitch. She placed her baby inside, trusting God to save him. Jochebed's daughter Miriam carried the basket to the riverbank. She hid among the reeds and watched. Pharaoh's daughter came down to the river to bathe. She saw the basket and sent her maidservant to retrieve it. When she opened it, she saw a baby boy crying. Pharaoh's daughter knew he was one of the Hebrew children, but she took pity on him. Miriam emerged from the reeds. "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" she asked. Pharaoh's daughter agreed. Miriam ran and got her mother, Jochebed. The baby was placed in his own mother's arms. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace as the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter. She named him Moses, which means drawn out of water. Moses grew up in the lap of luxury. He was raised as a prince of Egypt, surrounded by the finest clothes, the most delicious food, and the best education. Yet he never forgot his true heritage. He knew he was a Hebrew, a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As Moses grew older, he went out among his people. He saw their suffering. He saw how the Egyptians treated them cruelly. One day he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Moses became enraged. He struck down the Egyptian and killed him. Moses thought he was acting on God's behalf, defending the oppressed. But Pharaoh found out about the murder. He sought to kill Moses. Moses fled Egypt, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. Moses journeyed across the desert. He came to the land of Midian, where he met a priest named Jethro. Moses married Jethro's daughter Zipporah and settled into a quiet life as a shepherd. He tended Jethro's flocks in the wilderness, far from the palaces of Egypt. One day, as Moses was tending his flock, he saw a strange sight. A bush was on fire, but it was not consumed by the flames. As he drew closer, he heard a voice calling his name. It was God, speaking from the midst of the burning bush. God told Moses to go back to Egypt. He had a mission for Moses. He was to confront Pharaoh and demand the release of the Israelites. Moses was terrified. He was a shepherd, not a leader. He stuttered when he spoke. He was afraid to face Pharaoh, but God promised to be with him. Moses returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron, who was a gifted speaker. Together they stood before Pharaoh. They delivered God's message, "Let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness." Pharaoh was furious. He refused to release the Israelites. He scoffed at Moses and his God. Pharaoh ordered the Israelite slaves to work even harder. He increased their burdens, hoping to break their spirits. But the Israelites held on to hope. They had heard the promise of deliverance. They knew that God was on their side. Moses and Aaron returned to Pharaoh again and again. They pleaded with him to let the Israelites go. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He would not listen to the voice of God. So God sent a series of plagues upon Egypt.